in the setting of a pandemic, it's very difficult and probably irresponsible to do many randomized controlled trials, especially in the setting that we were in the nursing facility. What we were doing, all we were doing was treating patients, that's it. And so what we were doing was using the evidence that we have from China, studies that were done in China, using the evidence that we had in France, studies that have been done in France, where they had a mechanism of action, they had actually how it works, they had the large numbers of patients that it worked on. And so what we were seeing is that in the population that we were treating in the nursing facility, these were not people who were going to get, quote, get better anyway. These were people who were going to die. These were people with many medical problems. So they had heart disease, they had congestive heart failure, they had diabetes, they were obese, many of them. And so these were not people who were, quote unquote, going to get better anyway. In fact, the evidence was that this subsection of people in this nursing facility were going to die. 30% of them, 30 to 50% of them were going to die. That is the evidence that we had. And so this is a population that was very ill. And so we were doing what we did, not as a study. It was not a study, it was not done as a study. We were just treating patients. And what we saw, what we observed was that these patients did well. And so that's my point. These are all observations that we're making. You're right, they're not randomized controlled trials, but in the setting of a pandemic, everything that you've seen coming out from these places are observations. And so I think it's important that we just sort of step back and say, listen, from my perspective, it wasn't unethical, it wasn't, there was nothing wrong with that. What we were doing was treating them with the medicines that we had that I know from personal use are safe. And so if I know those medications are safe and they're not going to do any harm, and they have the potential to help by the studies that we had at the time, then that's what we used, that's what we did, and we had success. And in my opinion,
and the French study just came out and showed no benefit.
I'm sorry?
The latest French study I've read, it showed no benefit. And I understand at the time everybody is grasping for straws, but I think you have to look at the preponderance of evidence today. We've moved on, and when you're continuing to try to push hydroxychloroquine, you're doing that at the expense of other studies. 1 out of every 6 studies right now is done on hydroxychloroquine. Well, we could be looking at things that might be effective.
Well, it's really interesting. No one's making any money from hydroxychloroquine. I certainly am not. I certainly get no benefit from pushing hydroxychloroquine. I get no benefit from it at all. To me, it's just a little white pill. And so what I am seeing is, in my observation, in my experience, is that it works. And I see lots of studies that refute what you're saying. I see lots of studies that actually show that it is beneficial. The studies that I have seen where it is not beneficial are studies that are done in very ill patients, where I would argue remdesivir hasn't been very successful, convalescent plasma hasn't been very successful, because I've seen these patients not benefit from those meds as well. So my point is that hydroxychloroquine, in the studies that have been done, is that those patients are treated far in hospitalizations, and those are the studies that have shown that it did not work. The ones where it showed early on, it's successful.
Yeah, and I know it's a big debate. My husband's a physician, my daughter's a physician. I mean, it's a big debate in medicine, but when you do this, it's no different than the anti-vaxxers. The anti-vaxxers present some nominal evidence of risk of vaccines, and then they make the rest of the population vaccine hesitant. And that's exactly what this is doing. When you're presenting...
I take exception to your words, representative. I take exception. You've gasped opinion after opinion after opinion. Your husband's a doctor, your daughter's a doctor. This is irrelevant. Do not cast anything I've said or my colleague has said based on your own opinion.
Well, it's